care about the glasses.
Sorry to cut you off, Bob. But welcome back, boys, to another episode of the Blind Pig, courtesy of bgobsession.com. Real quick, I'm going to run around with the quick intros. Those viewing will see a couple new faces. We'll get to them in just a second. Those listening, figure your voices out, and that's your problem, not mine. Top left is Mark. That's Ohm on the board. Bottom left is John. He's better known as Boone. Top right is Bob. He's the neophyte, and I'm top middle. My name's Derek. I am Silent Threat. So those of you watching, you'll see two new faces on here. We got two awesome guests. Well, we'll say guest hosts because they'll probably be a lot smarter and a little more well-mannered than we are. Bottom middle is Tara.
It's a low bar, but yeah.
She's kind of our Twitter bomber. She's the one that kind of keeps everybody in check. And bottom right is Megan Imbert. I don't think anybody who watches this podcast or listens to it needs that introduction, but we're very happy to have them. So real quick, Tara, do you want to let everybody know exactly where to find you?
So Hillary Banks, with two E's, Hilaree Banks. I can spell Hillary Banks, on Twitter. And my real name is Tara. A lot of people know me as Tara, but I chose Hillary Banks to hide from my ex-husband, and that didn't work. And so I just stuck with it. And I answer to it. So it doesn't, whatever. There, you can find me there.
So Tara, I know you've got a little bit of an interesting background. If you could kind of elaborate a little bit as to why this subject is kind of special to you.
So, well, for a couple of reasons. I as far as being a fan or just what I do for work.
How long have you been a Redskins fan?
I was born in 76, and all I can remember is being a Redskins fan. We're immigrants from Tehran, Iran. And my dad wanted to learn American football, chose the Redskins. On Sundays, you watch Redskins football or nothing at all. So I have no ties to the DMV family out there, but I don't see them often. I'm in St. Louis. So that's in summary, that is why I'm a fan, even after having a few teams here, a couple of teams here.
So professionally, there's a reason why I think that this conversation is unique and you bring a different aspect to it.
So I advocate for victims of violent crimes, specifically sexual assault and domestic violence. So it's been not easy for me to separate the front office from the team. That's my team that I've grown up and loved. But what's gone on is not okay with me because it's literally what I do for a living. I'm a survivor. It's, it's hard. But again, like we were saying earlier before you recorded, it's just hard, when it's your team and especially being a woman who has lived it. And I've also, every day it's what I do is help victims of sexual and domestic violence.
Okay.
Thanks for being willing to come on with us, Tara. Thank you much.
Yes, thank you very much. Megan, you want to give a shout real quick where people can find you, and then we can kind of dive into
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. And Tara, really appreciate you. Obviously, I'm a survivor of a few things, but a lot of people don't know me, domestic violence as well. So definitely something that's super important. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people look at football as an escape from these types of things in real life, but there's people involved. So you could probably find me most now on Twitter at Megan Imbert. I really wasn't on Twitter really prior very much until, about 19 months ago. And then it's amazing, that network and how quickly you meet people. So that's where you could find me. Thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Not a problem. So I guess we can dig into the meat and potatoes of this thing. And about 9 hours ago, it came out that the Dallas Cowboys actually settled off books $2.4 million lawsuit for something that unfortunately is very similar to what we're dealing with. I kind of, no offense, selfishly, Megan, I kind of want to get your instant reaction because this is not a question that you've been able to answer on before now. It's real fresh. So like, if you can just kind of speak to now, this is another instance of the NFL and another team with another situation that is what
Yeah.
we're doing.
For those that are listening that might not be familiar, so it was reported today by ESPN that the Dallas Cowboys had settled with one of their VPs of communications, PR. He'd been like Jerry Jones's right-hand person, secretively videotaping a few cheerleaders as they were changing. And if we back up 19 months ago, so my job originally at the Washington football team, now Commanders, was my final role there was production manager of their in-house broadcast department. And after the first article went live by the Washington Post in July that had allegations against my former boss, Larry Michael, it was a few days later that I discovered through talking to former employees, I just trusted a gut instinct, started asking some questions, and found out that behind my backs, there were these explicit videos produced of the cheerleaders. And I left that organization. So it's very personal to me on a number of fronts, because I left that organization without a job lined up and reinvented myself in an entirely different field. And I was successful despite the circumstances. And then empathetically to feel how violated those women feel currently. Today, when I saw the news, and by the way, I think the videos was an annual project, and we do believe that this was at the direction of Dan Snyder's, like, ordering that these be produced. I stand by it. Brad Baker, also Tom Kercheval is another person now on record. I absolutely believe that this was ordered by the owner. So leadership stems to the top. Regardless, I want a criminal investigation there. But when I saw, to answer your question, sorry, very long-winded, just in case people aren't familiar. When I saw that today, me and Melanie Coburn obviously are very close, and it sparks a real visceral reaction. I mean, I'm in the middle of my day job and this news breaks, and I might get emotional even talking to you all about it, because I really haven't talked much about it today, but it's just so disgusting and disturbing to me. And it shows that there's a league-wide issue. And I think what really hits me on this subject is that these are women at the pro level in cheerleading. I have a niece that does dance, that's a young teenager. And I can't help but have my mind think about young women that are in high school or in college that could be experiencing this without anybody, knowing. So I have goosebumps right now, even thinking about it. This is where I get so angry. And I'm sure, Tara, you feel this too, because you're actually dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. But to put it in perspective, I didn't eat today. I ate finally at 5:30. That was my lunch. And that's how every time there's something else that's breaking, it does impact all of us. And then, at the NFL, they really have to come to a point where these powerful, rich men, and there's some women owners, powerful, rich people, there has to be a point of accountability.
Something that,
Go ahead, Mark.
well, when we're just specifically talking about the 2.4 millions in Dallas, one of the questions that I've had for a long time, not just when it comes to sexual harassment and this kind of thing, but anytime there's a settlement and money is paid, it doesn't seem very satisfying. It doesn't seem like justice is done. Money doesn't fix anything. Might make a victim's life easier financially, but it just kind of then goes away. And I'm not sure that we really fix anything that way. Let's talk to me about that. And that's for everybody.
That's a perfect question. I'm glad you're asking. You're one of the first person that's brought this up. It absolutely doesn't fix anything. And I realize, like, especially with the two videos we're aware of that tangibly we have, 2008 and 2010, those ladies did a confidential settlement, signed an NDA in December of 2020. I don't blame them for that. They wanted to just try to look past this and move on. My hopes was that there would have been criminal charges. They would have been paid anyway, eventually, but I want ultimately the person responsible or people responsible to be held accountable. I've talked to Melanie, I've talked to Lisa Banks, my lawyer. If we discover, and this is where I want the report released, and I believe again that this is an annual thing, if we find other ones, I absolutely hope that these ladies that are impacted do not do a settlement, go full throttle, criminal charges. That's the only way something's going to change. And this is something I know about, but who knows what else was going on? I know they had cameras at FedEx. Like, could there have been cameras in the dressing room? And I don't want to start rumors, but those are the kinds of things that have gone through my mind. And so
Yeah.
much time has passed that they could have swept and gotten rid of so many things, like when Larry left, or, they've had almost 2 years now to get rid of any evidence.
I think the NFL is so monolithic and monopolistic and powerful, and it's, obviously these owners are all billionaires. I think there's a certain level of, not a certain level, there's a extreme level of fear by the women and even men who are abused in other ways. That they just, maybe that appears to be the only option, is to settle and get what you can and make them pay it financially, because when you don't have an HR department, a legitimate HR department, this stuff does go on in other industries, but I'm telling you right now, I work in healthcare. No CEO would have lasted 10 minutes with even what we know already about Dan Snyder. They would have had to resign. A board of directors, which apparently the NFL doesn't embrace a concept of a real oversight board of directors kind of a model, because they would have tossed those owners out or forced them out already. But it's just really sick. And I agree with Mark. I thought about that earlier today. I'm glad those victims got something for the misery they were put through, but it's not enough. It can never be enough. And in the long run, it really does. It doesn't help everyone down the line when that happens.
Exactly.
Well,
You did bring up 2 points that I think are really valid here. For everyone that wonders, why are we coming forward now and all this stuff? When you make such little money, your self-esteem and everything is shot. There's no way we would have ever been able to go up against a billionaire. All of us that are being supported by the Katz Banks law firm, this is through the National Women's Law Center. We are being supported pro bono. So also, it's only through, I think, 2017, due to the Me Too movement, that really came about, where people could be supported. So we're very much the beginning stages of this type of thing, because there's no way in hell I would have ever been able to do that. So a lot of us are impacted too by statute of limitations. But John, to your point, by settling, and I don't want the ladies, if they're listening, to feel bad about it, but by settling, you're not preventing this from happening again. And that fundamentally is why I am not shutting up. So
well, I'm glad you brought, and I want to segue into something, because this is something I've thought about a lot. And Tara, you can jump in. Any of the guys can jump in, but specifically to Tara and Megan, because you see it on a regular basis. Okay, I'm not gonna. We joke around about how many listeners we have, because we're small time. We're not nationally whatever. But if a woman out there who was with the team, or is a victim of one of these crimes, or feels like that, can you, Megan, elaborate and can you kind of give us a window of what your life is like since you came forward? Because maybe if we can talk about these things and people can look at it and say, she's telling me that I'm afraid it's going to be really bad, but she's telling me it's going to be okay because I have the support. Or the other direction. I'm not trying to lead the witness here, but let us know what that like, and what it's been like. You said 19 months ago. What the last 19 months has been like.
Yeah, the behind the scenes is really fascinating when I think about it, because you're also dealing with Dan Snyder, an incredibly litigious person, and someone that holds grudges, is pretty vindictive. We've seen that. If you follow Dan Snyder on Twitter, he has his mega thread. You could just glimpse for 5 minutes. You're going to need 5 hours of all of
that may have had its own thread on our board about 6 months ago.
And he's incredible, right? And I'm just like, it's wild. So when I think of the past 19 months, some of us, there's been the use of private investigators. There's definitely been intimidation tactics. And this is all, within 19 months. And people talk about the changes at the organization and the audits that they've done. Well, all those people that are there that are new, they've been here through Dan Snyder's interference in this investigation. So for me, I think I didn't know what to expect the first time I would go on record when that Washington Post story hit, where we were on the cover of the Post in August. Definitely had some panic attacks, some anxiety. Do I have any regrets? Absolutely not. Would I have thought 19 months we'd be here with Congress? Absolutely not. But that, in my mind, in the scheme of life, I think that's pretty quick. when I really sit back and watch like how fast things have progressed. I think I've heard from a lot of people that it's helped inspire them to come forward. And I think you start to see the Blackhawks, you start to see other organizations. I think we're going to start to see more people have courage, but the problem or the opportunity is that this sort of sets the precedent. And my lawyer has said it best. This is one of the most widely, like, she's just in shock over how obvious this is. Such a situation of over 120 to 150 people with no report tangibly being covered up. And it's now with this common interest agreement. From my perspective, though, of course, there's some trolls on Twitter and everything like that, but overwhelmingly, I think when you speak the truth and you really bring it to light, I think people look at it more or less as this is inspiring, this is really brave. There's a whole bunch of people that nobody knows of that, you know, text me regularly, that participate in the investigation, literally listen to the roundtable in tears, texting me like, I can't believe this is happening. Thank you so much. Because either they didn't feel comfortable coming forward or they have other reasons. And from my perspective, it's absolutely, it has been worth it because the changes in the organization, they've happened because of us. It has not been Dan Snyder being proactive about this. This has been a result of what we've been able to do. And that's one thing. But on top of that, now at the Congress level, they're talking about the use of NDAs. They're talking about having more work done around sexual harassment and all this other stuff that I have to believe there's going to be a positive impact. And I think if society is going to evolve, there has to be a positive impact here. This cannot be swept under the rug. And I don't care if it's going to take another year, 2 years, 4 years. I think we made it very clear to Dan Snyder and Roger Goodell, we're not going to be silenced. You can scare us all you want. Sorry, Tara, you're on mute.
I am. So I was just saying, don't let them allow you to, don't let them keep you quiet. You know, it's the rate of unreported abuse is astronomical. And so just keep going, keep talking. I mean, that would be my advice. If you were,
I was going to say, I think one of the biggest shames is the statistics that we know of sexual harassment in the workplace. And you all can see as witnesses watching the past 19 months, how many hoops we're going through, how Roger Goodell's even saying he's not going to release findings to protect us, which we now know is absolutely false. It's just so disrespectful and gaslighting. And it's like all those special psychology terms that like,
yeah,
he repeated that just last week after already getting all kinds of pushback from you all that no, you can redact it. Most of us are okay with it anyway. And he repeated that. He repeated it again, like with just a bald-faced, obvious
John,
lie.
Melanie and Anna were at the New York City owners meetings when he's saying this, hand delivering letters. And I'm just sitting there like mouth on the floor, like, I can't believe this man. That kind of stuff just fuels my fire. Like, you're going to continue to just piss me off. I'm going to get louder.
there you go. And that's what you should do.
That is a social construct that's been in place for such a long time, where people in power simply deny and move on. And when change comes, I was listening to what you were saying, Megan, about essentially keeping the drumbeat going and beating louder. It finally started to break through in Hollywood, because people came forward, and then all of a sudden a guy like Epstein gets brought to light. And that didn't happen 20 years ago, that kind of thing. So what you are doing and what hopefully continues to come out of place somewhere, hopefully Dallas and wherever else it's going on, it's that drumbeat just has to keep building that until eventually an advertiser who actually is an important advertiser has said enough is enough. I'm pulling my sponsorship. That's
Mark,
when change happens.
I have two fun facts on what you're saying. So Harvey Weinstein, his clients were represented by my law firm. And also Dan Snyder appointed Harvey Weinstein to one of the boards of his companies. I can't be quoted on which one right now, but I think those are just some interesting facts.
That is interesting.
Interesting, but really not surprising, unhappily. Yeah.
So I was thinking, these guys know I'm a former Marine. I'm still a Marine. And, the military is ahead of the NFL. I don't know how long it's been since Tailhook, and you guys are probably too young to remember it. Some of you, but, the military had its wake up call. And I know because every single Marine and every single military person got sexual harassment training back. This is back in the 80s. And I'm not saying that everything's hunky-dory in the military. There's still problems. Obviously, pick up the paper and you see problems. But I mean, at least there was awareness at an organizational level in the US military. I mean, that was 20, 30 years ago. So the NFL, I was born in 62, but someone needs to tell Roger Goodell it ain't 1962. It's not.
You're telling him right now, John.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to watch. But
I don't think he subscribes, but we can hope, right? We can hope.
Well, you know what's interesting about Roger Goodell, right? He has 2 twin daughters that were, I think they're 20 right now. I was 19 when I stepped into Redskin Park at the time. And now he has a show or a podcast that his wife, he has co-hosting it called Earning It, about women in football. So he's literally using his wife in this as well. It's just, all of this stuff just makes me nauseous. Sorry, I have little.
No, don't be sorry. You
Yeah,
have nothing to be sorry about.
Crazy.
This
It's
is why we're
crazy to
here.
me.
Like this is why we collectively, we all 4 are partial owners of the website, and we talked and we said we need to show this support for you guys. So
Thank
anything
you.
you want to say,
We-
believe me, do
Yeah,
not hold
we
back.
do
I
support
mean,
you. And I can tell you, I can't think of one Washington fan that wants Dan Snyder to still own that team. He ruined our freaking franchise. And that's not just the reason why we don't, he's a scumbag. So we would love to see that change. Am I wrong? I mean,
no, not at all.
yeah.
Not in this room, you're not, no.
Yeah.
I think that's
There-
the burden that some of us feel, right? That participate in the investigation, that, you know, some of us have talked amongst ourselves. And I'm glad people like Tiffany Johnston came forward at the roundtable, but we've been carrying burdens and other people's stories. Like, they're not mine to share, right? So I think that's also part of it, where it's like, that's a big weight. And it's like, you've got to release this report. You know, we did it thinking this would be above board, and come to find out, you know, we were completely misled. And I want to believe that we live in a society that actually has some goodness to it. And I think this is where I get emotional. It's like, I want to believe that people in power can actually stand up, and I realize Roger's paid by the other owners, but it's so sad to me that, like, literally behind the scenes, like, I'm meeting with congressional staffers and Congress people for 4 months. So I might not have participated in the roundtable, but I'm one of the few that meet with Congress behind the scenes. And I'm sitting here like, I can't believe this is my life right now, because these are grown, powerful people. You know, they could just, like the $10 million fine, like Snyder found that in his couch. You know what I mean? It's just,
Right.
I don't know. It makes me kind of sad, because I want to have hope that we can have a society that, you know, women and young people in general can be in a safe environment. And, you know, Billie Jean King coming on the field at Super Bowl, that was emotional. That was beautiful, like Title IX. But that was 50 years ago. And I sit here and I think myself and these other ladies and Brad, and, you know, there are men involved. We're sitting here trying to make sure that now people can work safely in this environment. And it's like, it's just really sad.
I think I've heard a lot of people criticize, and it's kind of veiled as a political criticism, but I'm not sure I believe that's really what it is. But I've heard a lot of people say, well, why is Congress involved in this? The oversight committee. I've seen that a lot. And it's like, you know, my thought to that is, who else can hold the NFL accountable and Daniel Snyder accountable? There's nobody. If the NFL is not willing to do what you're talking about, which is just come clean, just open the damn curtains and the windows and let some fresh air in, and just acknowledge that you've got a problem and deal with it. But they won't do that. So in my mind, I don't know how you feel about it, Megan, but in my mind, what other recourse is there other than the federal government? Whether it's,
Well,
I'm not normally someone that would say, yeah, they should be doing this, but
well, and trust me, I will say this, even though if you watch the roundtable, it seemed like the GOP was like, we have other things to worry about. Behind the scenes, I feel like we have some support. So I look at it this way. Congress is giving the NFL some benefits with their media agreement that I think is worth over $110 billion. So they could flex that a little bit. If you listen to Jerry Conley, the representative out of Virginia, he's the one wearing one of our shirts during the roundtable. He's wonderful. And
Yeah, I saw him.
And they
Yeah.
did flex that a little bit. I watched it, and there was one of the representatives said, hey, maybe we need to look at these agreements we've had with the NFL. And if you want to hit Goodell and the other owners, it's their pocket more than anything else.
Well, and I think the thing we touched on earlier is that we know that this is happening in other industries, and I'm sorry to say, but there are a lot of male-dominated industries still, that, you know, no one should be able to have to sign an NDA and then not be able to talk about potential illegal activities or sexual harassment, all that stuff. So I think that there's better policies that could be put into place as well that does impact everyone. And also, what really dawned on me this year, because I try not to watch the games. I watched a little bit of the Super Bowl. I wanted to see the halftime show. I wanted to see the concert at the Super Bowl, you know, that kind of stuff. It dawned on me, like, I can't escape the NFL. I went home to DC to visit family, and it's like Thanksgiving, right? Like, what's on TV? Like, I can't escape it if I tried. And that to me shows this is ingrained in people's identity. You know, you all were talking about, like, if you're third generation, fourth generation fan or whatever, you have that connection to maybe a parent that passed and that was what you did. And like, there's a lot of those stories as I've gotten to know the fan base on a even better level, that I look at it like, this is so ingrained in our society. I mean, people are trying to petition that the day after the Super Bowl is a holiday versus like President's Day or something. Like, that's the conversation. And then how many sponsors are tied up in this too? So when Congress, we're asked those same questions, you know, Congress and stuff, it's like, this is such a prominent workplace that it's scary. And then of course, a lot of people might work at one team, go to another team, or go to the league. So if they weren't trained, as you mentioned before, like formal harassment training, or you might have an athlete be a star athlete, become a player, then work in the front office or something and never be corrected, you're just creating the systemic problem.
Yeah. And, you know, HR, unfortunately, I have learned is more for the employer than the employee. So even if there was an actual HR in this instance, they're more for the employer, and that's unfortunate. So you can't even,
Right.
I mean, it gets even bigger than that. I could go on and on just about how people don't really want to believe victims. They'll listen, but it is brushed under the rug way more than it should be. So
one thing I've found interesting too, and this has been painful, some of that behind the scenes stuff is, even though someone might have witnessed things, but because they didn't experience it themselves, they're not speaking up about it. And I've had a lot of time to reflect that now. I want to correct people in a polite way, or like, as a friend, I'm looking out for you, you know? I remember even having a conversation with Larry Michael after I had left, and he was just trash talking some fan at a bar. And I remember saying, like, Larry, you got to be careful. You know, there's these things called smartphones now. Someone's going to record you. And like, look, fast forward, like how he, you know, he had a hot mic and things like that. And it's just, you know, it's just totally screwed up.
Well, and then there's the old culture of, and we are talking about the old boys network here and the locker room mentality. I mean, I've been around long enough to have been around some of that, but it just dismays me how quickly the old boy network rallies around. I was reading that thing in ESPN about they just sort of closed ranks around this thing. And it would have gone away, but for somebody coming out and later, or somebody like some of us here are brave enough to come forward and speak. But there's this whole instant circling of the wagons. It's pervasive. It's like a knee-jerk thing. It certainly happened at Redskins Park. And you can see that it happened at Redskins Park. We've been watching it for years. It's maybe starting to tumble. Maybe the walls are starting to tumble a little bit, because it seems to be getting closer and closer to the source. And I've got to say it out loud. There is no way when I had to, it was a sick laugh, but I laughed out loud when Snyder at some point, Mr. Snyder at some point said, well, this stuff may have been going on, but I certainly didn't know about it. And I'm going to look right into it. The idea of that kind of thing going on, and by that, I'm talking about the videos and the upskirt shooting on the staircase and all that. does not happen in a company where the boss has said that shit doesn't happen on my watch. There's
He's
no
telling
way.
him, telling him to
There's-
draft Wayne Haskins with a first round pick, but he doesn't know what's going on in the hallways.
Well,
I
and
mean, give me a break.
and
Yeah,
to take that
you
a
know,
step
if-
further, Mark, especially not a place where everybody's as scared of the boss as they are Dan Snyder.
Bingo.
I mean, you know, the guy has a well-earned reputation, right? He's not afraid to just let anybody go at the drop of a hat. And so if he says this doesn't happen, it stops.
Unfortunately.
So Megan, you were referencing people like in the front office or players that moved up through the organization, and maybe they knew what was going on, and maybe now they're in a position where they could actually be a positive role model. So where I'm going with this is I can understand why current front office people and employees, maybe they're for the same reason that maybe some of you all didn't say, you know, I can't do this or really draw attention to it in the moment. They may be afraid of the same kinds of retribution. I hate that, but I can understand it a little bit. What I can't understand is what about former players and former male employees who had to see this stuff going on, and some of them may have been a part of it. Maybe that's an answer to my question. I don't know. But why have there not been players? Because not all of our players are
That's a
misogynist
good question.
bastards. Why haven't they come forward and spoken the truth?
I think the only one that's even spoken out is James Smith Williams, who's a 7th round pick, who's played about 14 snaps more than I
Yeah, I'm
have.
like,
for
who
the
the
team.
hell is
I
that?
would say I would say LeVar has been one of the ones on the forefront of this for a long time, whether people like LeVar or not. He's been very vocal. There's a couple players that have been, and I've had separate conversations with a few people. I won't name names right now. It's not clear to me if, you know, granted, I've never been a millionaire and I was paid nearly nothing. So I guess I kind of feel like I had nothing to lose, right? So I think I don't know what players sign as far as any agreements. Are they at risk of not getting payments on things? I don't know those logistics, but a few of them contractually aren't allowed to. So it depends on, like us, those of us that had NDAs, we kind of just went forward, because if you look at history, it's the people, as Mark pointed out, like in Hollywood, you know, some of those people had NDAs, but they needed to speak out. They needed to be brave enough. And, you know, it's sad to me because I thought I had some really close relationships with some coaches and some players. And I think in the background, some people are rooting for us. I've heard from some players' wives. Obviously, they can't speak up either, but I would love to start to see the tables turn. And then, you know, even with the conversation around diversity in coaching, you know, 70% of the players are Black. Like, I would really love to see, I mean, I know people got tired of like the NBA protesting and things, but I would love to see players get more active in speaking about these things. But at the same time, they're probably scared because if they go into coaching, like they might experience the same thing. Or it's like me, would I ever be hired by an NFL team again?
I'd hire you, Megan, but I can't help you.
But you know what? If I have to wonder to myself, like if we replace the commissioner, replace some head coaches or owners, I'm like, maybe like there's enough of us that came forward, we could run an NFL team ourselves, right?
There you go.
We have
Yeah.
all departments and all eras, right? I laugh about it, I joke about it, but it's true where there is a risk. And I feel like a few of us that came forward, we jumped industries entirely, right? So it's one of those kind of scenarios. And I've implored reporters to start looking at people that were terminated from August 2020 to present day and try to start to understand why were they terminated? You know, like, do we know, were they participating in the investigation or what, like, do they know too much information? Like,
Right.
I just think there's more to uncover here in this situation.
I brought up the idea of asking Joe Gibbs how he felt about all this. And I almost got burned at the stake because I was in no way implying anything about Joe Gibbs other than that
No.
he's revered. And I would like
if there's anybody that
That's like
could
my
make Dan
grandpa.
Snyder feel his
My other
height, it would
grandpa.
be Joe Gibbs.
And I had a good working relationship with Joe, right? So he was the first head coach, his second term when I got there. And some of those coaches, I think I think it would be interesting if eventually they come forward.
It-
It is unfortunate because there's something that's holding people back. And I get it. Like some people are worried about if they have skeletons in their own closet. But at the same time, I think there comes a point where it's like, you know, you can admit when you've made a mistake or you haven't been perfect or whatever. And I think for me, I don't want to sound, I don't know how this will sound, but I just continue to see the situation as so much bigger than myself and so much bigger than this team, what we're trying to do and what it's about. So maybe I'm crazy.
No, you're not, because I've said multiple times, you know, of course I love my team and I'm not defending any types of actions at all, but this happens with more than just Washington. It happens with more than just the NFL. It happens everywhere. And yeah, it's just unfortunate that it seems like there's no avenue for you guys, you know, to really go, because HR obviously isn't helping you, or in your case, there wasn't even an HR.
Yeah, there was, in the beginning there was, and then it became one person. But as people pointed out, you know, it was not a place where either if I ever had an issue with someone, I would go directly to my boss, at the time would be Larry, or if it was an issue with a player, I'd go to their coach. And I would just say, I'm handling this situation, I'm making you aware, because I also knew that I would be the replaceable one in the situation.
Mhm.
Or, you know, for example, Mark, you were talking about something that jarred this memory. Like, I wasn't allowed to eat in the cafeteria where my male colleagues could, because I would have been a distraction. However, my job was required that I was in the locker room with 70 naked men around me every day. So like the hypocrisy was everywhere, and the treatment like that is just crazy. I didn't even have
Say that again, Megan. You were not allowed to eat in the
Yeah.
cafeteria?
I wasn't allowed to go downstairs to eat in the cafeteria because I would have been considered a distraction. The only time I think I ever went down there was when Coach Zorn was there, and I was an intern at the time, and I liked to write, and I did a freelance article, and he was like, yeah, come down while I'm eating. And that was the one time interviewed Coach who went back upstairs.
How far did that extend, Megan, to you and all? Was it
As
no
far as I know,
women?
it was women. Some of my colleagues at the time in the department would bring me lunch. Sometimes a player or a coach would bring me up a plate.
That must have been the time they had allotted to talk about their misogynistic desires, is that during lunch. So they didn't want any of y'all down there to overhear
Yeah.
any.
There's examples of this, like even at the stadium, right? FedEx Field, we'd get there before a game, stay late, and we wouldn't be given like a proper parking pass. I say proper, we were given parking passes that were like really far away, and we're dressed up. I have like multiple G drives and laptops. Again, a player or a coach would give me one of their parking passes. But can you imagine? Because I'm like sneaking in that lot with at the time, I don't know what car I drove. It definitely stuck out like a sore thumb in that.
That was
parking
before
lot.
the Bentley?
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it was always embarrassing when like a player would park next to me in the parking lot at Redskin Park, and I'd be like, yeah, it's my ride, you know. But I would try to do that because for a safety concern, right? Like how would you expect me to come down here like on a Monday night game in the evening, and then we're getting out of there at gosh, who knows what time? We would group together and walk out together. Similarly, at the time, I was not allowed to travel, which now I think is probably a blessing in disguise. I wasn't allowed to go to the away games. However, I would get a phone call when they would land at Dulles Airport. I'd have to drive into the park at whatever time that would be. Sometimes could be 2 or 3 in the morning. And I'd have to upload all of the press conferences and get everything up on the website. Why would I have to get interviews of the game on the website at like an ungodly hour of like 3 in the morning or something? Because the owner supposedly wanted to make sure those were up and he could watch them. And then I'd have to turn around, go home. By the way, people could be drinking on the flight or on the bus. People could be sleeping in their offices. And I would end up coming back. I'd go back home, and then I'd have to be right back in there for like an 8 a.m. press conference. And it was like, those are the types of things when I left, I tried to fight to make sure the women in my department or whoever was responsible for that job duty, I could have gotten my job pretty much done and ready to go by the time I even got back, landed. So it was things like that where it was just, really crazy hours. And also when I think about it, now that I manage people, you have a early 20-something woman by herself in that facility between like 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. And there could be, players or coaches roaming the building after an away game, right? Nothing ever happened to me. I won't suggest that it did. But now that I think about it, when I manage people, like, what a dumb position to put a young woman in. It's just really stupid.
Again, this isn't 100% on point, but when you worked there, when you took the job, clearly you had a career in mind and you had an idea of advancing and where this all might head for you. Did you ever get a sense that you had a shot at moving up the ladder in terms of responsibility with that organization?
So it's interesting you bring that up. So I started out as an intern when I was a junior in college, and that was in the PR department. And then I was an intern in the TV department. And I was actually brought, I had the option of being a game day captain intern for a season. So I would drive from my college, which was in Northeastern Pennsylvania, back to FedEx Field. So I got the game day experience, which was awesome. And then I networked with the media, which is funny now. All the media I keep in touch with, a lot of them at a national level during this situation were beat reporters at the time then. Anyway, fast forward, I had an internship then with Larry Michael the summer of my senior year. And then they said, if you're serious about this, it would be great for you to stay down here, do the season with us. Unfortunately, that was the year, Sean Taylor's murder, all of that happening. And then I ended up getting the full-time job in 2008 as a production assistant. So Mark, I advanced from a production assistant, then to a producer, and then to a production manager. So I was actually the most senior person under Larry Michael. Never got a pay raise, $30,000 a year, won an Emmy.
Hold on.
What?
Sorry, hold on. Can I?
This was 5 years, right?
Is there
Well,
not?
sorry.
I'm sorry, Derek, you were there 5 years.
So full-time 2008 hired, left in 2011, but
Okay,
three
gotcha.
different positions and technically title promotions.
So can I ask you if you've and I don't know if you can even speak to this because it could be legal, but at that point you're talking, because I'm in corporate America. I can tell you right now, you have, or at least from what I understand, you have a grounds to stand on with some prejudicial.
Yeah, I just think the problem now is the statute of limitations for me. From that perspective, it's been so long since I worked there, and it's unfortunate now. I wasn't the confident person I am now, right? So I think at the very least, I want to draw attention to the situation to help other people in the future. But it is very sad.
Yeah. I'm trying to wrap my head around 30,000.
I know.
In Loudoun County, by the way, Bob.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah. I totally get it.
Richest county at the time in the nation, and a county I grew up in, and I could not pay rent. In fact, I'm very grateful I had some cool people in my life that I would give like my game day tickets to and stuff. They'd be able to meet people, and I basically paid them rent through experiences in my life. It's so terrible.
I mean, even in St. Louis, that's like a very low salary. So for the DMV, I'm just like 30,000. And for the Redskins, for the freaking Redskins.
That's what, and maybe you're right, statute of limitations. But I can tell you right now, nobody in 2022 is taking 30 grand after being there for 5 years. And especially, and this is it's a little tongue in cheek being a middle-aged white man, but there is no chance in the world that a woman is going to be able to stay at that salary for that long without some sort of prejudicial representation saying that you're being mistreated. 1,000%.
It just speaks to the overall.
I get why taking it too, though. I mean, you thought it was a position that was going to take you really far.
Exactly, Tara, when you're in that industry, and I studied media technologies in college, and I mentioned this on the Junkies recently, they kind of teach you, if you're going into that kind of field in entertainment and media, that you're going to be on a ramen noodle diet. You have to work your way up. So I was grateful at the time for the opportunity. And when you go back to 2008, getting full-time employment right out of college was a tough time in this country. And so I took that as an opportunity, and let's see where it goes. I had just felt that there were false promises along the way of my management chain. And ultimately it was the final straw where I unfortunately had a death in my family. It was March of 2011. And when stuff like that happens and tragedy happens, you really just start to think like, okay, am I on the path? Is this what I want? And finally it came to my point of like, this place does not align with who I am as a person. And I have nothing to show for it. Not that I'm material, but like, I want to pay off my student loans. I want to actually, you know what I mean?
Make your rent, it's simple things
Well,
like that.
and you know what? I was really worried about going on record to talk about these kinds of things, but I think they're worth noting. Like, I knew what overdrafting my bank account felt like. It happened all the time when I worked there. And it's a sad reality, because I think if anything, if I'm vulnerable about my experience, it might inspire other people to be that way too. And I'm very thankful for my career now and where I've gone. But Mark, to answer your original question too, it was I always had dreams of being an investigative journalist. And I think it's kind of funny and ironic, the current situation right now, and how much in this situation people have come to me, talked to me. I knew the media, like, it's been really kind of ironic that in day-to-day free time, this is what life has become.
This is and how it became this way too. Yeah.
I'm dying to ask you about the whole, you're wearing the shirt with the report. Look, let's talk about the report or the lack of a
Yeah,
report.
well, I believe there is one.
Well, you can just go on this. I don't know the right questions to ask. I've been in depositions a fair amount in my time, but
Sure.
I'm just curious about what that experience was like, what you thought of her, what you thought of the questions she asked, because we all know about how questioning can sort of lead to answers that they want to get. Talk to us about how that all went down.
Yeah, so I think Beth Wilkinson and her firm, they're reputable attorneys. Also, when I decided to do the investigation, my lawyer was on the line as well. So keep in mind that Lisa Banks and her staff, for the most part, at least of 40 or so people, they heard their testimonies to the investigation team, not necessarily the remaining, 100, whatever we want to call it. And if my attorney knows how bad some of this is, then I can only imagine when you double it or triple it. I prepared about 5 pages worth of my own memories. And it's interesting because as I've gone on record and I've talked to Melanie, Rachel, Anna, Emily, all of them, and some of these ladies, like, I never worked with, they came after me, right? A lot of very similar experiences, or, wow, that happened to you too. Like, very eye-opening. It is a little, I want to say it's kind of cathartic because you keep a lot of that stuff repressed. And Tara, I'm sure you know this, is like, even now there's certain things, like when I was hearing the roundtable, I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Like, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of that going on right now too. But overall, I mean, we were sold on the thought that this, was going to result in a report. It's very unheard of that a physical report wouldn't be produced when you have Deflategate being 243 pages on the air of balls, or Ray Rice or whatever. I would estimate that something like this with over 100 some people, I mean, they're already talking about all the documents that Congress is asking of the NFL. And that's, thousands of documents that they're requiring. And from my perspective, if they don't pass over the Beth Wilkinson report or her notes directly, it's not going to be sufficient for me. I truly hope that there's a hearing with some subpoenas, and hopefully we'll hear from Beth Wilkinson herself. It's really unfortunate when you look at the common interest agreement, though. I had always felt that the moment I knew that I thought the NFL was working with Dan Snyder was when they gave him 100% ownership. I think that was probably one of the most traumatic days for me. Like, you're talking tears, like bawling, like, this is a sign that they're not caring about us. Totally irresponsible.
It was traumatic for me. Whatever it was for you was a
outrageous.
whole lot further down the road than traumatic. I can't imagine. I had a hard time with it, and I can't obviously have no intimate, knowledge of what goes on inside. I've never even been to Ashburn, much less inside the building, right? So I think traumatic is way understating it, Megan. I really do.
It was
That was a
outrageous.
horrific
I couldn't
day.
believe it. Even by Redskins standards and the NFL standards, it was pretty unbelievable that they would do that. It's just a smack in the face to
Well,
every one of you.
It's irresponsible is what it is. You let this man, like, who in their right mind allows someone with an active investigation to come out more powerful and untouchable? At
Well,
least wait until your findings conclude that he's okay. So to follow up on the whole question, we were led to believe that this was above board, that there'd be a report produced. And then when we found out about the common interest agreement, I think that just solidified my initial, again, a gut instinct that they were aligned. And I think it's just really sad right now because I look at it, if we're expected to participate in another investigation and try to believe the NFL is going to do this independently, I guarantee you majority of these people are probably not going to participate again. I'll give you line of sight. Like when I participated in that investigation, I think it was on a Friday afternoon. I think it was about 3 hours. I said, before you ask me any questions, I just want to read my papers to you, my 5 pages to you, and then ask me whatever questions you have. You're talking tears. I couldn't believe some of the things I was saying out loud because, and Terry, you might hear this with some people you've dealt with, like, if you've kept this repressed, and sometimes I was basically saying something out loud that like I had never probably admitted to myself before. And so
you learn things as you're telling your story. You learn things about yourself as you're telling your story. You're like,
and it's also embarrassing. And by the way, there's a bunch of people on a Zoom call. It wasn't just like, there's my lawyer and people and Beth's team and people, and it's like these strangers, and I'm like just bearing this stuff out there. And I think that's probably one of the toughest parts is like, what I did after that, I deleted I had the file, deleted it, like took my notes, like, okay, I did my part in this. If I'm expected to like regurgitate all of that, and after all this time, and honestly, being on record can be exhausting, right? Like, especially when you're one of few people willing to do press constantly. And I will not turn it down. I won't turn down a podcast because I just think there could be one person hearing that and it could change something, or you know what I mean? So I think it's
I don't think a lot of people know how hard it is to tell your story. I mean, that one time, let alone multiple times publicly. So
not to mention family and friends that had no idea things were happening, right?
Yeah.
And it's not to say like people will be like, oh, well, you seem to have been enjoying your job there. It's like
they don't get it.
Relationship.
It's so much more than that. I mean, you're trying to survive for one. So you almost kind of ignore a lot of things subconsciously, but then 6 months, 12 months down the road, you realize this was not okay. And is it too late to say something? Who really is going to believe me? What am I going to say? Why am I saying it now? There's a lot of questions there. So you don't have to explain it to me. I get that.
Yeah. It's a really tough one because before I ever went on record, I kind of had like a Zoom call with my family because I said, like, my parents, like, I don't know if I'm going to get sued. I don't know if this person's going to try to smear my reputation or whatever. But I was like, any questions you want to know? Let's talk about it. Because at the end of the day, I really only care about your opinion. But at the same time, this is global news at this point too. And it's just kind of a surreal experience when you're kind of watching history sort of unfold too, and you're in the middle of it. Sorry, I'm gonna get emotional. I'm like, your viewers are gonna be like, this is way too heavy.
No, this is what we were hoping to talk about. Megan, I don't know how much of it you can talk about, but was Wilkinson, was there production of documents I don't know what they might have asked you for, but do you know what they may have sought or gotten from other?
So
Testimony?
I don't know definitively about the documents, but I would have to believe that they had to have been taking some notes. So it might not be a formal report, but when you look at the common interest agreement, it originally states production of a report. And then I think, I don't know the date top of mind, it might have been,
They redacted that part.
I thought it was like October of 2020 when the NFL took
Dog.
over. Can you hear her snoring?
Oh, not,
I thought that was
Oh, I
Bob.
thought you could
it's
hear
my
her.
dog. I was telling my daughter, get your dog.
Oh, I thought, so if anyone
No, no.
hears it, Sky is most definitely
I wish
snoring over
mine
here.
were snoring.
She's
Sticking
very
at
embarrassing,
Mark's
even
lap
on
is-
work calls Zooming. They're like, I can hear your dog.
It's the cat in Mark's lap.
Yeah,
So as far as documents go, I'm not quite sure, but I think it was like our investigation started like July, August timeframe. And then the NFL technically took oversight like October, November. But that would have been like multiple months of preparing, documents, notes, whatever one would do. So I don't know definitively, but I would say my assumptions are there's absolutely documentation. I mean, it's just hard to say. I think I won't
It's
say
what
too
lawyers
much.
do. It's what lawyers do. I can tell
It
you,
is.
I have a family full of lawyers. It's what they do is document.
well,
Yeah.
and the ticking time bomb are those videos, right? And whose fingerprints are on those videos? They're out there.
Well, and we have two of them, right? And I think time's gonna tell. I don't want to overshare, but like I absolutely think this is a repeatable project.
So Megan, I want to ask
I
you,
agree.
one question about, you mentioned earlier that it's been 19 months and you're kind of pleasantly surprised of where it's gotten to, that you've actually been, you and the other victims have been more successful getting this, not letting it get squashed, getting it in front of Congress where maybe something can happen. Sometimes when the ball starts to snowball a little bit in scandals, sometimes what happens is people that weren't previously willing to come forward start to feel maybe more secure or validated or maybe less threatened. And that may be happening with NFL ownership as well. But I'm just wondering if you have any sense of, there have to be other people that have not come forward that maybe have
Yes.
their own stories to tell. And I know you can't speak specifically.
No, I am straight up telling you, yes, people have reached out to me. I won't disclose what, but yes. And I think there's a real sense of this is legit. We're not letting this go away. Congress is not letting this go away. I believe this to be a bipartisan issue. So my hope is, especially after the roundtable, and I think, we've been in the press so much. I think it's a lot different when you actually can see and hear people talk about their experiences and the bravery of getting in front of Congress. I mean, me just watching that live stream, I burst into tears, seeing just their backs sitting in their chairs. Like, those are my friends. Those are my colleagues. Those are people that like I've come to think of as family the past, 19 months. Some of these people I never knew before. And it's like, what an incredible experience. And I promise you, nobody would be coming forward making this stuff up. This has been so disruptive to our lives,
Yeah, I'm glad you said
It's
that.
not enough to tell the truth, let alone to make this shit up. Excuse my language, but I mean,
Oh, I thought
Yeah.
they were totally believable and genuine. I felt like the testimony was.
I was
you start
actually
talking about
shocked.
the details.
John, so basically here's the story. Like after the roundtable, they went to a restaurant, a few of them with our lawyers and everything, and they decided to FaceTime me. We decided we were gonna have a shot. And like, I was just like, you guys were flawless. Like there were a couple tears here and there as expected, but like no stuttering, very point, like. And I had read a few of the statements, days before and was like, helping edit things or, because they had like 5 minutes. But I was joking like, wow, like you guys either got media coaching, like they just were so like, but I think your adrenaline's flowing, right? I'm actually relieved that I wasn't asked to be a part of it because I feel like I would just break down at this point. So I don't know.
I think the foul language might have come out.
You know, it's interesting.
Might have gone the other way.
You know what, that's interesting, because like I do pride myself. I feel like I'm a classy individual. I don't mind cursing. I know I have a professional life and I try to separate the two. But I do hope if we have a hearing, you know, I hope that it's open to people to attend, because I really would like to see a few people face to face. You know, I think that's something that will be a really powerful moment in this process, is if I, you know, see my former boss face to face and see some of these people. There's people that have denied working there. There's people that now have removed the team from their LinkedIn profiles. I'm sure they're getting hit up by media. There's probably reasons why they're doing that, but I think now is still the time where they could get ahead of this thing. I think by human nature, people are forgiving, they're understanding. You were put in a morally bankrupt spot in some instances, especially with the videos. Of course, that's the thing that really keeps me driving. But it's in my book, it's not too late. And I've tried to make some inroads, like, hey, if you want to talk, reach out to me. I'm sure from their perspective, they don't trust me at this point, and that's fine too. But I think I've gone above and beyond. I even wrote like a letter to colleagues. Sports Illustrated released that. I don't know if y'all remember that last year, where it's basically a plea to my colleagues to come forward. Yeah, it's just a sad situation.
It's sad because they're shameful and they're embarrassed and they feel they're not going to be believed. And those are just the facts. I mean,
yeah.
So you were talking about how well that the people spoke. I don't know how to say this without sounding completely hokey, but we've all spoken probably publicly in our lives. When you know what you want to say and you know what you're saying is true, it's easy to speak. I've spoken in much bigger situations than I ever expected to. When I believed what I was talking about and I had truth and I knew it was not hard. It was not
100%.
hard. And that's when I sit across the table from people, I can generally tell when they're telling me the truth, because of half the time from the way they're talking. There are obviously very skilled liars out there, but generally you can tell.
It's interesting, Mark, when we did the FaceTime at the restaurant afterward, and I was just like pumping everybody up. I had said, I was like, you know what, y'all were so poised, but it's because you're telling the truth. Like,
yep.
I thought it was just amazing. And I'm sure they practice, but like, I just can't imagine. And I just admire how they were able to do that. And then there's people like Jason Friedman that came forward, the person that wrote the letter, right? That's massive. I mean, he's corroborating and direct.
Is he the guy that corroborated Tiffany Johnson's story? Yeah, that's pretty brave. That's why I was getting at with that question. It's like there are more people like that. Like, why aren't they coming forward? They have wives and daughters, and I mean, for God's sake, you know, I mean, it's time to tell the truth about what went on.
Not just
the victims.
And someone like Jason, you know, he worked for the team for like 20 some years. He has like tattoos of like Redskins. Like he was always a fan. I'm really proud of him. And I'm hoping that there's more people like that are going to come forward. I've heard from a couple of people, and all I can do is put them in touch with my lawyer, and hopefully we'll see, you know, what the next few weeks holds. But it's not an easy thing to do. But at the end of the day, I feel like I've said this before, like the test isn't always on paper in life. And this is one of those moments where like you can either come forward, do the right thing, and sleep well at night. Well, so your question earlier, Derek, I think you asked about like how the past 19 months been. I'm like, sleep is not the best. Okay. I'm not going to lie, but eventually I'll sleep well completely through the night. But I can't imagine how some of these people that know stuff are, how do you sleep?
That question was more proposed to say, hey, there might be other people that are involved. There might be other people that were, you know, victims. There were other people that witness things that are afraid to come forward because they don't want a backlash. So I'm curious, where are we, and you know, where are you, and what have you experienced? But not to pivot completely, but to kind of pivot a little bit. I am curious, Obviously there's no love lost between you and the franchise. Obviously we've heard how you've been mistreated, but there are a bunch of fans, myself included, that still compartmentalize. I think we all do, at least the gentleman on this podcast, as well as Tara. We compartmentalize. This is our team. We've rooted for this team, and my stance is I've rooted for this team since before Dan Snyder was there. So no offense, pardon the foul language, fuck that guy. He's not going to ruin that for me. I'm going to root for it when he's gone. Chances are I'm not going to let go. But I am curious, where do you stand with the franchise? Where do you stand with the fans that kind of live the way that we do? We literally own a website devoted to the team. Now, that doesn't mean we support this. You know, a big part of that is this podcast. A big part of that is the multiple threads we have on the board devoted to saying, hey, Dan Snyder is not what we want. But where do you stand with that, with fans? Because I know you've done a lot of interviews, and I'm sure people probably have some negative connotation that you're a hater or something. But speak out, please. Like, this is your platform. Where do you stand on that?
So I have some mixed emotions, and I think as this thing evolves and the fan base learns more, I'm all for supporting the players and supporting the team. Me personally, I am not supporting by buying merchandise, buying tickets, any of that. All that money is going directly to Snyder and the league and all that stuff. I also applaud some of the third generation fans that recently got some press on the boycottdan.com page, that literally it's another harassment assault survivor and her husband built this page overnight, literally after watching the roundtable. That's so easy for a fan to put in their email address and hit up all the NFL sponsors and the team sponsors. I think we're at a pinnacle.
That might have its own thread on our message board. I'm just saying.
Great. I think from my perspective right now, where we stand in the past 2 weeks, yes. I think where we stand the past 2 weeks is kind of like, not that you have to decide between supporting the team and supporting us. You can support the team, and like you said, you're not supporting the owner, but I do think we need to pay attention to where our dollars are going. And for the moment, I mean, whether you agree with it or not, the name change happened because sponsor dollarship had power. And I think right now, all of these sponsors, they do have diversity, equity, inclusion, corporate values. And frankly, I'm sorry, the stuff that I know is in that report, this man should not be in power. So where we stand the next, like these past 2 weeks, I would really hope to see more fans starting to get outspoken around Dan. We have an off season here to keep pushing the envelope, get sponsors to potentially think about their social conscience. There's a few fans that I've been close with, even when I work there. It's so hurtful when I see them. It's like, I'm like, is this team paying you? Those kind of fans, I get a little bit like, it's under my skin where I'm like, are you even gonna really call this stuff out? Stuff like that. There's only a handful, right, of people that I personally knew that are a bit more fanatical. That's where I'm like, I'm learning how to like, I don't want to unfriend them because I think they're good people, but it's driving me a little crazy because if I told you what I know, like, I'm like, how? So I want people to be able to enjoy the game. I would love nothing more than one day to have a beer with y'all and go see a game, right? Like, that's what I would love to see happen. And
Well, that was kind of my follow-up, is like, where are you with this franchise? You know what I mean? Like, where does it come back to you? Because obviously you were employed by the franchise.
You know what's sad? It's sad because I have a box here in my apartment that has like, I have my Emmy Award out, but I have like memorabilia from working there. Like, obviously I won't get rid of any of my Sean Taylor stuff, but I sit here and I'm thinking like, right now, so much of the stuff now holds like a negative feeling for me.
They let you down, Megan. Remember that every day. You didn't let them down.
Right.
And however you feel about them, it's good to go. You don't ever even think about
There's
that.
no pressure coming from us. I'm just curious because
I was thinking I should just auction this stuff off and have it go to the National Women's Law Center.
I don't think I've ever had. I don't think I've heard anybody ask you that question, because obviously you were involved with the franchise. way more deep than,
Well, I mean,
on a
think
much
about it this
different
way,
level than
like Sean
we
McVay
were.
just won the Super Bowl. Like I knew Sean, right? Like I want to root for people. I still know coaches in the league.
When
I
were
don't
you?
know how many
If,
players I
well,
still
when you were
know.
there, he was probably only about 14 years old, but
I think we're the same age though. Isn't he like 30? Is he in his 30s, 35?
Early 30s. Yeah.
early 30s.
Early? I
No,
thought he
he's
was my
36.
age.
I read
Okay,
it
so he's
today.
older. He's older than me by a year
Yeah,
then.
he's
Okay, I'm about
36.
to turn 36.
And what's
You're-
funny is
you're a
all
lot
those
nicer.
guys that came off of his staff that are now head coaches somewhere else, every single one of them's older than he is.
Yeah. But gonna be more of them too.
Yep.
So I
The-
think it would be really nice to just, I'd love to just enjoy the game, you know. It's tough. And honestly, you guys aren't gonna like to hear this. I grew up, my dad, he's to blame. I actually grew up a Steeler fan because of my dad.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say cowboy. Okay.
And
get it.
Yeah,
remember-
Steelers is fine. That's AFC.
was-
We don't care.
Oh yeah. But
I was-
obviously I mean I wanted my Super Bowl ring and I love that you're wearing a Sean Taylor jersey right now. So I definitely like would love to see them be successful, but not while Dan Snyder gets any credit for any of that. You know,
Right.
it's really hard. I feel for the fans and I feel like everything they've done from the Sean Taylor Memorial, I'm sitting there like, I talk to Sean every day, like literally everything that they've done just pisses me off. And I'm sure it pisses you all off, but then like I wake up every day and I look at something and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
It is
We
an
had a
abusive
whole
relationship.
podcast. We had a podcast dedicated to how they fumbled that. And
Yeah.
one of
How
my
they
favorite
fumbled
fondest
it.
memories, and not to dig too deep into the sand here, one of my fondest memories was I was literally at the Target in Ashburn, and it was about 11:30 on a Saturday night, and I turn the aisle, and I'm wearing a Redskins jacket, and I look, and there's Sean Taylor, and his daughter was on his shoulders, and here comes his girlfriend around the corner, and I didn't have it in me to go up to him, but I kind of gave him a nod, and he kind of gave me a nod, and I respected that more than anything else. Because I know he's human. He wants to be a human. He doesn't want to be a player all the time. So I respect them as people as much as anything, which is why, you know, this will be something I'll forever do. And it's got less to do with the guy with Dan Snyder. Screw that guy. He's a piece of shit. And more to do with the fact that I want to represent something we all appreciate. And I think everybody on here we kind of speak the same language.
Yeah.
And it's so much more ingrained with the people than it is with the owner, which is why we keep coming back and we keep holding on, because we have the Art Monks and the Daryl Greens and the Mark Rippons and everything we had to tie us to this franchise, that if we can, I hate to say it, but we can kind of let go of that, because I wouldn't know the four people on this screen if it wasn't for this team. I wouldn't be talking to the two of you if it wasn't for this team. So there is a value there, and there's something that we're all connected to, and it's hard to let go of that.
It's well, and I wouldn't want anyone to let go of that. And I think that's the beautiful thing about sports and the communities and the camaraderie that it brings and things to look forward to and root for things together. I would just say right now, the things that we do know that are in public, we're just at a pinnacle moment of banding together as that community and take a stand on what's right here. And
I think we can support both. I think we can
Agreed.
support the team and the players and you guys and your voices and everything that's happened. We can support both. Dan Snyder, unfortunately, is the common denominator here, but somehow I'm still trying to forget. I can't forget about him, and I can't forget about what's happened to you guys or to your friends or to your colleagues, anything like that. Justice, I believe every one of you deserve it, whatever justice looks like to you. But it's so incredibly hard when you love this team I'm 45, for so many freaking years. And then this son of a bitch, excuse my language, comes in and buys the team as 32 years old or something. I don't even know how old he was at the time. And he's ruined our once very proud franchise. So we're struggling in a very different way, not like you, but in a different way. So
I think it's interesting that Dan Snyder was a fan of the team and he's so rich. It's like can you just put your ego aside for a second and do what's right by this
And
franchise?
sell the fucking
If he loved
team.
this team, he would sell it.
Yeah.
If he loved the team, he would know I'm hated. I am literally hated by the team that I bought because I was such a fan. And that, I mean, I will never understand, how can you sit there, I don't care how rich you are, and be despised and be the sole reason why the fan base believes that the franchise is a wreck, and you're the reason for it, and yet you do nothing, and you just continue with the same kind of behaviors that you've always had. And the last thing I want to say tonight is I thought you were very generous, Megan, about the whole fans being able to compartmentalize. You're very gracious with the way that you phrase that. But here's my thing. We drove Bruce Allen crawling out of Ashburn with a hashtag. We basically, the fan base drove him out of that building with just incessant, brutal mocking and hashtaggery. If we could do the same thing with Dan, every game could start with Dan must go, Dan must, whatever it is, just like they Roger Goodell, him at every draft opening. We need to do the same thing every tweet, every game, every team event until he's gone. And the fan base, if they wanted to do it, they could make it happen. I believe they could make it happen. But
I
I think
wholeheartedly agree.
They might be able to drive the sponsors, which I think we're all grown-ups. We know that if something's going to happen, it's going to be because of the money.
Dan,
we
Well,
have to do something.
boycott
Fans have to do
Dan.
something at this
Boycott Dan, before this conversation tonight,
It's
it's
growing
almost up to
quickly.
10,000 emails sent,
Wow,
and
that's
has
great.
coverage from Washington Times, Fox 5, WUSA 9, and that's just within the past 24 hours, which is
Well, and about 3 hours ago, Fox 5 had the report live on TV and called out every sponsor that they reached out to. So now it's not just an article. There is vocal news with sponsorship names like Nike and Pepsi, Anheuser-Busch, all of them being spoken, which is a lot more than we could have ever expected.
You mean
I
FedEx,
would expect-
Anheuser-Busch, Bank of America, Captain Morgan, Geico, FanDuel, Grubhub, Nike, New Era, Papa John's, Pepsi, USA, and United Airlines. Those are the top 12.
So I would expect that Dan Snyder's whole group is probably scrambling to call all of these sponsors as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to ignore it. We've changed everything and all that stuff.
Well, the more
So-
news
I'm not sure I'm
outlets.
taking that call right
What was
now.
that?
If I'm a sponsor, I'm not sure I'm taking that call
Yeah.
at the moment.
But I'm going to
There's a
answer the
tipping
phone every
point. There's a
time. Every
tipping
time a
point.
news outlet calls, I'm answering that phone.
Yeah.
So I'm not unaware that it's 10 o'clock and we've been at this for a while.
It's only
and-
9 o'clock central, but I just,
Oh,
can I
okay,
say
so
one
we'll
thing
do
and I'll
another
shut
hour
up?
then, right? No.
Yeah, that's
No,
right.
I just-
Mark's like,
Megan,
that.
ends the podcast.
I think that you are very courageous, and I'm gonna get emotional. But let me just chill out. Right. I appreciate your truth. I respect it. I believe you. I hope that you get the justice that whatever it looks like to you, I hope that you get it, and the people around you. It's not easy to talk about, and just don't let them shut you up. Just keep I'm gonna curse. Keep fucking going. Okay. So that's
I want to elaborate on that a little bit. Megan, you've been interviewed by a lot of people.
And
lot
by
of
the way, I
questions.
have more time. I mean, I'm like halfway through my drink. So if anybody wants to jump off,
Well,
I'm having a great time.
you've been interviewed by a lot of people. There's been a lot of questions. You've been restricted by time. I am genuinely courteous. Is there anything you need to say
Yeah.
that you have not had the opportunity to say? You have the platform, and whatever it is, I don't think anybody here is gonna take any issue with
You know
any
what's
of it.
fascinating about that, and I appreciate it, is that I tend to appreciate when I'm live, like when I've been on Fox recently. It's just, it comes out and I know I'm not going to get edited and I know what I'm going to say.
This
I
won't
think
get
I've said
edited.
a-
I promise. I'm the one that does it. It's not going to get edited.
None of us have skills to edit it. We can only hit the record button and the upload.
We don't even
button.
have.
I didn't
exciting
say
intro
that, Bob. Don't throw me out there like that.
Actually,
would-
I could edit it, but I won't. So
I would say my message, because I know you do have fans predominantly listening to this. I would just say, like, we're not trying to distract from the game. We're not trying to do that at all. This is really much bigger than the game. And I would love to, I want to have beers with people. Like, everyone jokes, like, if we get Snyder removed, there's going to be a parade in DC and we're all participating. Like, that would be an incredible day. I mean, what an experience. But I would just say for everyone, really try to have some compassion and empathy, because it's very hard to come forward with these experiences, especially on a global level, and questioning when someone comes forward or why they waited or any of that. And I think I alluded to it at the beginning of the podcast. There's no way in hell any of us would have been able to afford legal counsel to go up against a multi-billionaire. So think about your wife, your daughter, your sister, your cousin, your friend, when you hear our stories, and just know that this is bigger than the team. And I do believe there will be a day where we'll be successful as a team again. But this is a really interesting time that we have to hold very powerful people accountable, and there's a lot of risks to that. And I decided before I went on record, like, I understand that this is a serious risk, but I think it's worthwhile at the end of the day. So I just appreciate the support. And, you know, if you see the crazies talking trash to me on Twitter, I love when a fan comes in and, like, has my back. It's just,
We won't allow it. I won't allow it. I'm very vocal.
Today was a bad day. And I'm like, and there people are like, Megan, mute button or block them. And I'm like, no, but I want to see what they have to say. But then I'm like, are they being paid? Are they bought?
I didn't see anything today because I was busy, but I'll chime in. I'm not shy. So
that's another thing. Like, I want the fans to go after the sponsors, and I want the fans to shut down the crazies that are out there. It's starting to come to more of a head. The past year or so, I think we've been spoiled where we've just been kind of supported, and now all of a sudden it's like, well, you know, all this stuff. And I'm like, you are a part of the problem.
I'll have to go back and look. See, I'm the petty type of person that's going to go back and look and reply to a 12-hour
Tara's going to find a message from September of 2020. So she's going to be like, come here, bitch. I got you.
Like, what the fuck? What do you mean, you stupid? No, let me shut up.
I had time to look today, and I started to reply and realized that, you know, you'd already handled it, Megan. There was nothing for me to say.
But I feel like I handle it, and then I'm getting gaslit.
Your fault. You made $30,000. I saw that one.
So that one, you know, I'm putting myself out there, and they're like, "Yeah, well, you should have left," and da 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 da, or your expenses were more than what you afforded. I was like, no, my expenses of food and rent and all that. And I do feel like I'm putting myself out there quite a bit, but just to let people know what the true experience was.
It should, you know, to circle back to that. I thought about it when, all right, I'm in IT, right? I work for vendors that create things, and I have for 23 years. My first job was in engineering, and it was for a startup company. I was employee number 26, and I made $30,000 a year. And they handed me a pile of stock options to make up for the fact that they were way underpaying me. Right? That was a startup company. We sold because we couldn't keep the lights on anymore. We had a product that everybody wanted, but we couldn't keep the lights on for a lot of different reasons that don't make sense to talk about here. But the NFL should be embarrassed.
Yeah. If any employee of anybody makes 30 grand.
This is an entity, a business entity in the United States that comes as close to having a license to fucking print money as anybody outside of the federal government. It is stupid the amount of money they make. And for any one of the 32 franchises to have an employee on their payroll, I don't give a shit if you're a part-time employee. There is nobody working for an NFL franchise should be making $30,000 a year. That is absolute, utter bullshit.
Hey, Bob, all those internships, and I get it, it was my choice, all unpaid.
And that's not unusual. That's
remember, it's still 1962. It's still 1962. Right. So 30,000 bought a lot of groceries in 1962. That's
well, 30 grand to start is bad enough, but what the part that gets me is that 3 years later, you were still making
Right.
30 grand after winning an Emmy and being
And
being good
two
at your job.
promotions.
This is just wrong.
And
It's
I was
disrespectful.
never a real material person, so I was kind of like, okay, I'm going up the ranks, I'm doing my thing, it's gonna happen.
You were getting
And
your
then-
foot in the door, you know, to do.
And that's
what
how I
you
looked at it. It
love.
was like that sweat equity, you
Yeah.
know, like I was willing to do that and I got it, but it was it was kind of the last straw for me where it was like, all right.
When I was that
Yeah.
age, I looked at it that way too. I'm not
Yeah.
that age anymore, and I don't look at it that way anymore. And I tell anybody
You know
that
what?
age to not look at it that way.
Megan,
Demand
we're
what
gonna
you
get
worth.
t-shirts made. I came to Ashburn for a career and all I got was this shitty t-shirt. Let's make that happen. Put release of the report on the back.
Oh God.
We're getting all sorts of t-shirts. There's boycott Dan, there's release report, sell the team Dan. Like
I might have ordered a t-shirt that says it's a damn good culture. I mean,
I want my
Oh,
hashtag.
God.
I want my hashtag to catch on. It's very concise. Just fucking go. That's my hashtag.
I like
Just
that.
fucking go.
Just
That's it.
leave, you
No,
son of a
Dan,
bitch.
they'll know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's like,
everybody knows who you're talking about.
He'll still be
Oh.
rich. Just go away. If you're a fan, if he's a true fan, sell the team to somebody who's gonna fucking win. I mean, like
I have to believe, you know, Tanya Snyder did the one podcast. We haven't talked about her tonight. I'm sorry, Mark, we're keeping you on longer.
No, I
Um,
was just about to ask you about Tanya. I've got,
But
that was one of the
Tanya,
questions.
I mean, I
One of
think
mine.
about it this way. Like, I have to believe that, yes, I understand that they want to keep this team for their son or whatever, but how embarrassing all of this is truly for them. And I get it. They're rich. They can go sail off on their, you know, extremely expensive yacht or their $15 million houses. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. But the point is, it's almost like what is really keeping you? Because you're going to make money when you sell anyway, but you're putting everyone, if you care about your family, you're putting all these people
yeah.
also constantly in the limelight, and it's embarrassing. And it's like, you know, I'm sure like they want to go out in public and like, I don't know what that's like for them either. And, you know, I applaud Melanie because we talked and like, she's a praying person. She actually prays for Dan Snyder. And I applaud her for that. It made me a little emotional where I'm like, you're praying for this man to, you know, find healing in whatever has made him this way in a sense. And that I think is a really beautiful thing. But at the same time, I was just a little bit shocked this morning when we talked about it. And I'm like, you pray for him. Like,
I mean, he's
it's amazing.
it takes a strong woman to pray for a monster. I mean, that's ultimately, I mean, that says more about her than it does him. Really.
I think it's believing in people having redemptive qualities and being able to share when they've made mistakes and change and take a, you know,
Yeah.
he probably has a whole lot of life ahead of him. Like you can do things a different way.
Yeah, after watching him for 25 years, I think he is as close to irredeemable as any death row serial murderer you will find. The difference is he did it with money, and therefore he's lauded because he went out and, you know, his business background is horrible from a moral standpoint. What he did prior to the football, the dude has always made money off of other people's pain and anguish.
Are you going to go through Dan Snyder's thread right now?
No, I'm not going to go through dance. It's not, you know, at this point in time,
We don't have another hour and a half that we
well,
want
we
to sit on
A,
here.
we don't have another hour and a half, and B, Dan's not worth that much of my time anymore. He was at one point in time when I
but
thought
he's
we could-
wearing a hoodie, man. He's only the co-CEO and he's got a hoodie on. I think
I
you're being
know.
kind of hard on him. You know, he's not
He
involved
looks
in
rough
anything.
too. He looks really rough.
Yeah,
He
the
doesn't
beard,
look
the
rough
beard's
enough.
not working.
No.
He doesn't look rough enough. He doesn't look like somebody took him out behind the dumpster with a piece of chain and a garden hose yet. So
I don't know what it's gonna take. God, it's
you know, and we keep talking about him selling. He's not gonna. Dan is never okay. He's a fan.
Never going to change the name. Is that what you were going to say?
He's a
Yeah.
well. That's a
Yeah,
different matter.
Put that in
Dan is
all
a-
caps. It's
Dan
never
is
going
a
to happen.
Super fan. When the team sells, I sincerely hope that the next person that buys this team is not a fan of the Washington football team, the Washington Commanders, the Washington Redskins, whatever we're going to call them today. I sincerely hope that it is a business venture for them.
So
now
what
they-
about, real quick, just one last thing, just one last comment, I swear to God. And I probably have his name wrong because I'm a little tipsy. Mike Falero, right?
Florio,
Mike
Florio.
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 Oh, we were going to ask about Florio.
NBC.
What
yeah.
about his comment and Beth Wilkinson saying that he should in fact sell the team?
Well, that goes back to the Junkies originally reporting on this last year, right?
Mhm.
I believe news outlets are not going to report on something that's false and risk their reputations.
Especially
So
one that's been ingrained in the DMV for 30 years, literally 30 years.
yeah, so I believe the Junkies in what they reported. I think what was interesting about Mike's statement was the newsworthy different comment was about owners potentially starting to align with
Do you
or
think
not
if the
align to him.
report was released and more was to come out, or say her report, who knows what it says? Who knows? Say it's something significant enough. Do you think there's something significant enough for him to actually have to sell the team in that report?
I think it comes down to the standards for the owners. And I also question what's the purpose of the bylaws? And
Yeah.
at what point is enough enough? What do I need
Right.
to tell you has happened in order for this person to not be managing over people?
Yeah.
I
Well,
believe that is absolutely in the investigation.
So
Does
Here's
anyone
the
know
thing.
how many votes you have to have in the NFL? How many of the 32
I
have
thought it
to
was
vote someone out?
75%.
The 24 of them have
But
to go?
I think it was 2/3, but I also thought the commissioner could make a decision, but maybe I'm totally wrong on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You may be right. I haven't looked at that in a while.
But I question the bylaws anyway, what's the point of them if other folks have lost ownership for lesser things?
Here's the
Yeah.
thing that gets me. Megan, I absolutely believe there is a report, just like you. I absolutely believe that there is a pile of paper somewhere. I also believe that all 32 owners have had access to it.
Yeah.
They are
31.
all aware. Every single one of them is aware of what has gone on inside the halls in Ashburn at this point in time. The difference now versus then is that then they thought they could hide it. That makes all 31 other owners complicit
Yeah.
in this. There are laws about that, guys. They're helping to cover up a crime. Roger Goodell is helping to cover up a crime. This isn't small.
No.
This is me
The
on.
NFL is not very smart, guys. I know we think they must be because they're the NFL and they make billions of dollars, but they're not
It's
all
just
that
money.
smart. And they could have done something very shrewd when the name change came down. They could have said, we're going to move the team. Snyder gets to keep his team with his new enlightenment. He and his wife's new enlightenment about how you're supposed to act as adult corporate people. You're going to move to some other city and we're going to start over with a new franchise in Washington. That's what they should have done if they were insistent on protecting Dan Snyder and giving him another chance, but they didn't do that. So it's kind of like right now we've cut halfway through the tree, thanks to Megan and other courageous women. And now is the time to start pushing the tree,
Well,
pushing the tree.
John, I think you're spot on, because another thing, and I don't want to talk too much on this, is that we know their language that they speak is money. We are not about the money. We don't have an active lawsuit. We just don't shut up. And I think ultimately that's where change will occur, where it's like, you can't put a price on where we're at on how to cultivate change here. And they don't know what to do now because we're not going to be quiet.
Not going away.
Not to sound terrible, but you can put a price. Dan Snyder put it in all caps. We will not change the name, and then until my corporate sponsors decide they're not paying for it anymore. Like,
Well, I'll say this back, Derek. I can't put a price on it because I'm not going to be willing to be silent about it.
but that's that is my point, and that's my point. You can stand on the pedestal. You can stand at the top of any mountain you want to stand on. The minute money is involved, guess what? Every one of them bloodsuckers is going to turn their back on you when you start costing them money. The sad thing is, we have had the lowest attendance in the NFL for years, and we're still a profitable team.
Yeah, somebody
It's
said
not-
the fans have already boycotted. It just wasn't about this.
Right. Well,
There's a certain
that's what someone said. Some on Twitter, they said Washington Commander fans should not go to the game to boycott Dan Snyder. And I said, have you looked at the numbers? Like, I'm sorry to say this. Have you looked at? We stopped going 10 years ago. So,
And even when there are people there, they're wearing the other team's colors.
correct, which is where the problem is with Snyder. He doesn't care what you're wearing when you show up, as long as you buy a ticket. So
I think
guess
Megan
what?
hit the nail on the head, which is the boycott Dan. Do your part as a fan, as a
Hey,
human
but,
being.
I mean, we wrote letters to the sponsors directly months ago. I think it was October, and radio silence. And as we've seen it just takes fans and other people having that massive amount. And I've spoken with the people that organize that website. I'm like, I think you need to change up who you're emailing once in a while. So it's not just they could, block the inbox, find out another C-suite person, find out the board, all those folks, and change the messaging from time to time. And I like that you can edit it. And I think personally, I want to take a closer look at that as well as like a personal note, see if I can find some folks on LinkedIn where it's like, this is, and I want to see if I know anybody that's higher up in any of those organizations that it's just kind of like, you need to come out and say something. It's better to say and threaten your sponsorship than just sit there and ignore it.
Well,
Eventually,
Megan, I don't know if I can tap into this a little bit, and you can tell me that I'm out of my mind, but the CEO of FedEx was a part of the organization.
yeah.
And he
His
was the
son
one that
was actually,
constituted
I
the
knew
name
his
change.
son. Yeah, his son was in the scouting department for a bit when I was there.
He might or might not be a prominent member of the Falcons. So that might be kind of something that I can't email him. He'll tell me to go F myself. But somebody who might be listening, one of your followers, one of anybody's followers, to cultivate, to get that kind of a relationship. FedEx is on the side of that building. Dan Snyder's in the process of trying to renegotiate a stadium deal. The NFL should have every interest. If there's going to be a move, it happens before that contract is signed. So these are the kind of people that in sponsors that literally fund the day-to-day operations. These are the people that need to be attacked. Well, I shouldn't say attacked. Should be contacted and spoken to. So, Megan, it has been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to speak on behalf of the other three guys on here because I really don't care about their opinion. But it has been a great fun to have you here. Fun
This is
by
awesome, Derek. I think
literally
we're gonna need to
saying
break,
it's been a really good conversation. I
we
don't
need to
mean
break
fun
it
by
into
it
3
happening.
parts. I think we have like a 3-part series going.
She's got a lot to say. We
So
need to let her
this
speak.
2-hour podcast is going deep into the Twitterverse. It's going to happen.
Megan, we talked about rooting and what we're rooting for. I mean, I keep rooting for the guys on the fields, and I like to watch good football. And I'm rooting real hard for you at this point. It's like I will be watching even more closely and following along. And I'm going to go ahead and say it because I've got daughters, but I'm proud of you for what you're doing. Not just, it's not about.
We
the
all have
football.
daughters, by the way.
Yeah,
we
we
do.
do.
I do too.
Yeah,
Mine are 21. Yeah.
Every one of
So
us.
yeah. We're definitely rooting for you.
And they would
May
not
not
be
feel
where
like
they
it.
are at 19 months without you and all the other women. It wouldn't have happened. So no matter what happens in the end result, just don't ever forget that.
And if you're willing, we may reach out to you again as this thing moves forward.
I would love it. It really means a lot. Mark, you almost made me cry there. Like it really does mean a lot. Because this is just, it's not something you'd ever expect, like your life, all of a sudden you're in the middle of this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
Like,
you're in it, girl.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
um,
and in a different vein, I mean, kind of close to what Mark said, but slightly different. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, we're all fans of the team, and we hate to see what's happened to us, and we all hate what's happened to the people that were close to the team. But without people like you doing what you're doing, this stuff wouldn't be going anywhere. I mean, it really wouldn't be going anywhere. So thank you, A, for coming forward, and B, for sticking with it.
Yeah.
You know, you're the my girls are significantly younger, but I hope that you know, if they're ever in this position, that they find some inspiration in what you're doing at the moment, and they follow it and they stick with it, just like you're doing. This is exactly what I'm trying to teach them. Thank you.
If nothing else, and this is setting a very low bar, if nothing else, this will allow future women and generations to speak up about any type of violence that occurs to them or around them. And I think you're courageous, you're strong, and just don't let them shut you the fuck up. And I excuse my language, but that's how I feel. Just keep freaking going. I don't know where it's going to take you, but keep freaking going.
Megan, I don't know if you
Thank
can
you for-
communicate
yeah.
this to the others. If
We
they
have a
ever want a
group chat.
platform,
We talk all the time.
if they ever want a platform, they can jump on here. I'm sure the rest of the guys on here, Tara will join. Megan, you can be. They can shut video and tell their story. Okay, like this platform is open for them if they want to take that, and if they want to tell their story. I don't think we would ever hold back from that. And John, Mark, Bob, you can answer that sentiment. But if they want to have a platform to talk, if they want to have a platform to tell what's going on, or if they want to take it elsewhere, you know, we got your back. The four of us will support that, and we'll do it on our board. We'll do it on our social media. We'll do it every way we can publicly, to make sure that you guys understand that you have a voice, and you have our support as fans.
Thank you so much. And it is wild that it's been 19 months and, you know, no one's ever done what we're doing. This is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. So this could be another 19 months. It could be another 3 years. I know how hard it feels right now. And I just look at it like this is a marathon, and I really appreciate the support personally. I don't think people get it at all. The people that are in it get it. So we're kind of like a weird family, if you will. So even just reaching out to the other folks on record, I think it means a lot. You'd be surprised at how very few people will directly message and say like exactly like the thank you or the, you know, it really does hit hard, because I know in my heart this is going to make a difference outside of just the NFL. So I really appreciate you all having me and giving me so much extra time too. So you'll know in the future. Megan, we have 15 minutes. No, but seriously,
we're not like that. We don't play that game.
No,
You
thanks
guys
for
both need
hanging
to
with
eat
us.
something. You both need to, as soon as you get done here, go eat something.
Yeah.
I had my lunch later. It'll be good.
I've just had Fireball.
And some water. Go get some water. Good Lord.
My eyes, they're not open. Sorry about that.
Hey,
No,
Tara.
I'm sorry.
Fireball.
You could barely get a word in edgewise, Tara. That's usually how it is around here. So
It's just, yeah, I am going to eat. I'm going to eat some cake. So, something really, you know.
Decadent.
Tara,
Yes.
thanks for what you do too. I don't want that to get lost in here.
Yeah.
No way, yeah.
Lot of respect and gratitude.
Hey, you know, as a survivor, I feel like I can best advocate for victims, because I've been there, and I don't want to say I've gotten over it, but I've healed and I've come a long way, and it's been a lot of freaking years. So that's why I'm so like passionate about the whole topic in general, just because it's what I do and it's who I was.
I'm so
Sure.
glad we invited you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. And
Yeah,
my
well,
Fireball.
We'll have to follow up on this conversation a little bit. And thank you guys so much.
I mean, I'm very curious what happens throughout the rest of this week. and
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
next week, you know?
Might have to have an emergency podcast, you know, look at me, I'm not even a host and I'm
Hey,
like,
Just
we're having an emergency.
everybody makes jokes. If people are curious about what's going on in the current situation, just follow me on Twitter. It's like an aggregate of every possible thing.
So
So-
so then I'm gonna say this: keep your phone on because you might be hearing from us. We're getting on this thing quick.
Totally.
Yeah, and so
Anytime.
slightly off, but not completely. You know, if you want to come back and talk football, either
It's
of you.
been a
you know,
while. It's been a while. I
you
don't know how much I would
we-
offer
we
to the
actually-
conversation.
We actually do talk football. You know, and if you want to come back and talk X's and O's and free agency or whatever, yeah, you know,
You
I'll
got
just
it.
throw
You-
that out there. The other three.
I
names-
love it.
I know a little
I might be a spectator in that one because it's been like a long
Well, then
time.
you and brother Paul would get along great. I'm just saying.
I know a little bit about that, so I might talk
Yeah.
X's and O's with you guys sometime.
We would like
Be
that.
awesome.
All right,
Thank you
guys
guys.
so much.
This has
Thank you.
been
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a great
Stay
night.
well, be safe, you guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Megan,
Bye-bye.
thank you.